Hello, everyone, and welcome to Plugged In with Diane Warren. Today, we are chatting with mental health first aid instructor and GLA online educator Holly Kondreska about burning out online and mental health in the remote workplace. This podcast was created by the team at Good Learning Anywhere, a division of the Sue Hudson Literacy Council. Our theme music is by bensound.com, and we are your hosts, Diane Altinbalek and Warren Butler. Hey Warren, how you doing?
I'm good, Diane. How are you today?
I am pretty good, all things considered, but I am feeling a little bit burnt out by a lot of this remote work that we're doing.
Yeah, it's been about 12 years of this now? For me, anyways.
Almost 9 for me, but for some reason the pandemic has actually made it worse, and I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
Yeah. So what's been new with you? How are you doing?
Doing good. Of course, we're recording our podcast today, and my neighbors have decided that they're getting a new driveway put in today at this time. So I've been debating about ordering some pizza and just dropping it off next door so they can take a break and we can get through our podcast. So we'll see. Hopefully, there's not too many interruptions.
That's a really, really good idea. My son was sent home from school a half an hour into the day, and now my husband has taken him out for a fast food lunch and a visit to the playground so we can have some quiet.
That's good. We got a full team effort here because my wife's working from home, but she's taking the dog out for a lunchtime walk. So I'm hoping it's quiet and we can get a good recording in here.
Yeah, hopefully we get through it okay, and hopefully we're not on too big a time crunch as everybody returns back to the house and resumes their noise.
But that's all part of the topic that I think we're going to talk about today.
Tell me about it. How timely is this? So, without further ado, we're going to introduce to our listeners our guest, Holly. Holly is a mental health first aid instructor certified by, I do not remember what body, but I'm sure she's going to fill us in on that. And she is also one of GLA's very own instructors. So, Holly, welcome to the podcast and tell us a little bit about your roles, both as an entrepreneur in the mental health industry, if it's correct to call it that, as well as at GLA.
Hi, awesome. It's super great to be here, and I'm always excited to talk about myself and anything mental health related as well. So this is really great. So yeah, I'm an instructor with Mental Health First Aid Canada, which is via the Mental Health Commission of Canada. So I am lucky enough to teach in-person 2-day mental health first aid courses. And then, of course, with the pandemic, we had the inevitable switch to an online environment too. So we also offer mental health first aid standard, which is done via Zoom. And it was one of the first times that I experienced the anxiety with being in Zoom, despite us working in this online environment already.
Yeah, like as we were saying earlier on, Good Learning Anywhere has always been an online school, and I don't know how many of our listeners understand this, but we are spread out all over the province, the team that is, and we have always worked from home. So I was really, really shocked. I kind of figured it's like, well, my daily work life's not going to be that interrupted. It's not going to be that difference. And then the pandemic came along, and we got a little bit of a rude awakening there. So we experienced, or at least I did, I don't know about you, Warren, but I experienced a whole bunch of different anxiety and mental health issues on a whole different level.
Well, yeah, like with the pandemic and everything, just the sheer ability to just have to concentrate, and we all have jobs we have to get done and there's things we need to do. But when you add the pandemic on top of everything, it just adds so much more. And even just being able to focus can be a challenge.
One of the things that I found was really stressful for me when we switched to having cameras on. For the people that don't know, like with our online learning, we do a lot of live classes, but we leave the cameras off so that we keep the quality of the stream going good. But with Zoom and these virtual meetings, I found it really uncomfortable, like staring at myself in the camera. Because like you notice so many little things, and then you kind of think about those things, and it really takes away from trying to establish a connection with people during these staff meetings or during these virtual meetings as well, as you become focused on other things like the lag in the video, or you even miss things like when people like take that breath in, you're like, and then you're like, well, maybe I won't ask that question now. Like you miss so many things, and there's so much more things in your head during these kind of environments now.
Hmm. So when Warren and I established this podcast, part of the reason was that we wanted to get some good educational material out there and some good support material for other educators in the LBS field. And we had commented on how we couldn't just couldn't do another Zoom webinar and how zoomed out we were. And then in one of our staff meetings, you had actually created a feature called the Mental Health Minute, and you had talked about something that was called Zoom fatigue. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Zoom fatigue, it's also kind of known as virtual fatigue, and it has a lot to do with people that just really are feeling that sense of exhaustion either before a video call or after a video call. And again, it really comes down to all of these other demands on our brain while we're doing these video conferencing types of communication. So if you've ever, left a Zoom meeting like extra drained or extra fatigued, or if little things are now stressing you out, or you're feeling that burnout, then maybe it's time to change how we conduct ourselves when we're doing virtual meetings.
Hmm. I know that when we lost out on having in-person conferences and staff retreats and everything went to Zoom, I was spending so many more hours not moving, sitting at my desk, staring at a screen, enduring eye fatigue and headaches and all of that type of stuff. And it kind of made me feel for everybody around me too, because everybody's going through it right now. And you can't really reach out to somebody to talk about what you're feeling without that impending anxiety of they're doing the exact same thing I am. Like, why am I burdening anybody with this? Who am I going to talk to about it? So, who do we talk to about it?
Well, the great thing is I've got a lot of friends in this workplace. So I know you and I talk a lot about a lot of things. Not about you, Warren, don't worry.
Okay, that's
Um,
good.
Sometimes it's about you, Warren, but it's all positive, we swear.
I think it's good to just recognize that it's we do have these emotions, and maybe we need to have these emotions validated, and we need to say them out loud. Maybe other people have been struggling with these emotions too, and they'll want to have that sense of connection with you as well, and then you can heal through that discussion about what's going on.
Hmm. So, what are some of the other impacts that we might go through from working remotely? Like, we know that there's a little bit of a mental health impact here, but what are some of the other
Well,
issues?
you definitely touched on one with the how physically exhausting things can be. You're sitting in the same space. Maybe your posture isn't always the greatest. Your chair is not really the greatest. Maybe it's time to schedule some breaks in our workday as well.
I've also heard people that, not so much us because we've always been remote and we've kind of always dealt with it. But one thing I've heard about people in work environments that used to be in person that are now switching to online, they're starting to experience these interpersonal problems among coworkers. Has anybody else heard about that?
I haven't heard too much about it, but like I could see how that would affect people. Just that face-to-face experience, it's not the same over the screen. You can't replicate that in-person face-to-face conversation. So I could see how that's hard on people. Even like when you think of like kids, right? when they had to stay home, like the lack of social interaction they had, and you could see it in the kids, like they were really, really struggling.
Mhm.
So I don't think adults are any different. We have that need, right? We need that interpersonal connection. We need to see people. You can't stay locked up forever.
No, definitely not.
And the hard thing is, like, you forget about people's personalities in a virtual workplace. Like you forget that someone's actually hilarious, but after 2 years in Zoom, they start to look like a little bit of a jerk. So could it be something like that as well, that we're just missing that human connection?
Yeah, and not just Zoom either. So there's a lot of people that I haven't had the ability to interact with that much in the past year and a half. And mostly what I see from them is their burnout coming out in their social media profiles. And I'm just kind of like, oh, this is not who I remember you being. And if this is who you are now, I'm not sure we can be friends anymore.
I have a couple friends that go through that whole, like, I'm done with social media, goodbye. And then I just kind of roll my eyes and I'm like, yep, heard this before. They'll be back. Because I'm not
Yeah.
texting them. Ugh,
I
what
took a
what
break
a
for a
step.
little while too, and I ended up coming back, but I didn't announce it or anything. I just deactivated my profile. And the only thing that brought me back, I probably wouldn't be back on Facebook if it wasn't for that's the main tool where we promote this podcast.
Yep.
So it's you,
I
our
think
dear listeners, it's you that brought me back into the social media fold because I love you.
a lot of everything in life, not exactly everything, maybe that's far of stretch, but a lot of things come down to balance. Like we
Mhm.
need to find this balance of, having that connection but not going completely overboard with it.
Mhm.
you know, we have our weekly staff meetings on Fridays. And, when Zoom kind of came out, it was kind of, it was a fun new program, a new platform. It was something different. Some people thought it was easier. Just, it was new and different. Everyone seemed to be using it. But the one thing I found was with our Friday meetings, just keeping the cameras off, or at least giving people that option. Like if you want to turn it on, great, no problem. If you don't, no problem at all. Like it's okay. And I think that's been something that's helped. Just knowing that you have that option. But I know for listeners, not everyone has that option, right? Depending on other workplaces, it just may not be an option. So, which makes it even more difficult, I think.
It's I got to admit one of the things that I like is eliminating that sort of pressure to perform by having the camera off. And I do experience a little bit of anxiety when I'm in a session that requires cameras be on.
Mhm.
Um,
So
so yeah, I definitely
it's
appreciate that you don't make us have it on in the staff meeting.
it's hard. Like sometimes, you can go from one meeting and you've got the cameras on, and maybe it's a little bit a more serious topic. It's a stressful meeting for whatever reason. And then you got 5 minutes to jump into the next one. And now you got to be upbeat and smiling and cheerful. And again, like you have
Isn't
to be on, right? It's
isn't there
tough.
a Zoom filter? Haven't they fixed that? I heard there was a Zoom filter for pants. Can't we put a Zoom filter for like paying more attention?
Yeah,
Like,
maybe.
come on, Zoom, listen.
Just put an
But
avatar up that looks really nice and change your name to reconnecting.
some of the things that we can do if we are having the camera on is just being aware of where our camera is spaced. Because if the camera is like up in my face, like I feel like someone's in my grill, and I'm just like, back off. This is COVID time, like 6 feet, please. So something we can do is just, like, put the camera like a good 3 feet away from us. And then if someone else is like 3 feet away from their camera, then we're still maintaining that like 6 feet of social distancing. And I feel more comfortable when people are a little further away from me. So just things like that, adjust your camera, try to remove those distractions. And the hard thing too with working from home is knowing when it's time to turn off the computer.
Mhm.
as well. It's so easy to turn that on or look at your phone or check out that email. And we need to really keep those lines of work and family life separate.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I know that it's difficult for some people working from home to maintain that work-life balance because they might not be as fortunate as, say, I am, where I have a separate room that's dedicated to an office in my house, except when my in-laws are here because it's also the guest room. Um, but there are some people who are working from home around their dining table while their kids take online learning, and everything is so enmeshed, their workspace is their home space. And then you get into bad habits too, like you have alerts on your phone if you get an email, and then after your work hours, you check it thinking, "Yeah, it's only going to take me 2 minutes to reply to this." And then you 2-minute yourself to death.
Hmm.
So, what tips do you have for the worker to stay sane in the remote working environment?
Ooh. Well, I think Warren already hit on one. Well, you both did with the whole, turn off the camera if you can,
Mhm.
right? It really takes a lot of that stress out of having a virtual meeting. Things like if you can't turn off the camera, change the view in whatever virtual workspace that you're in so that maybe you're not staring at a giant, large icon of your face as well. That might help. There are so many awesome tips we can even just talk about, like try a regular phone call. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but those phones, try using them to call somebody instead of always having to Zoom meeting it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and just some of the little things like, having a dedicated workspace, making sure you're taking breaks to get up and move around. Um, Try avoiding scheduling those like back-to-back meetings as well, because then you're always having to be on and going through the whole like, can you hear me? Can I hear you? For every single meeting can also add up those little micro stressors
Micro
as
stressors.
well.
Tell us a bit about what a micro stressor is.
Oh, I think you can tell me about a micro stressor.
No, no, that's not my job. That's what we
It's
have
all
you
those
on here
little
for.
things. It's just those little things that might not be so big, but then you get a bunch of those little things that just keep going up and up. One of the micro stressors that I find when I teach in live meetings, and although no one hears it and it drives me bonkers, is I have a pet tortoise in the loft and he tries to escape his loft every time I'm in a virtual meeting, and no one else could hear it, but I could hear it. And oh, it just, wow. Yes, it is very, very annoying. And it's those little things that can really just set you right over the edge.
With
Yeah.
me, it's things like the dishwasher. The dishwasher will hit some sort of cycle where it just seems to get really, really loud.
It
And there's
goes to
certain areas of the
ludicrous
house.
speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Little things like that. There'll be days where it just kind of adds up, and then my husband, who will be working from home that day, will walk around upstairs, and I'll hear his footsteps, and I'll start wondering, like, is my microphone picking it up? Or I'll focus and just, or I'll lose focus and be like, "Oh my god, what is he doing? Where is he going?" and stuff like that, and then I won't be paying attention. I'll end up completely checked out of the meeting and distracted, and then I'll
And
be
then
so
you're aware that other people see
distracted.
that on your face.
Yeah.
And then, yes, it really can snowball.
Yes. Snowballing is a good word for that.
Yeah, it's hard too, right? Like even if you're leading a meeting, there's so much going on. Like first and foremost, you typically have an agenda and there's certain content that you kind of have to get out through the meeting. And then when you have all these distractions, the text chats are flying around, people are raising their hands, and then in your workplace, people are walking around. My kids are making lunch, they're slamming dishes in the sink. They're
Or your adorable dog starts barking and then we all want to see the dog.
100%. And then we're completely off topic
Yeah.
and we just lost 10 minutes of.
I think something that's really helpful for people to think of if they're doing long sessions like this is to build some of this into their meeting. Why not take a 5 minute movement break? Why not have somebody pick the next music and we're going to take a 2 minute music break? Why don't we all grab our pets and shove them into the camera for a little let's meet our pet session?
Which we've
Like,
actually done before. We've had that come up. So
mhm.
anybody who's familiar with Good Learning Anywhere or knows any of the staff personally have probably heard us talk about rays of sunshine. And what those are is a few minutes at the every beginning of every staff meeting where we talk about something that is not work related and try to humanize ourselves again. And we've had lots of times where people have turned on the cameras and showed off their pets, and those have been some of my favorite meetings.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm very like emotionally invested in one of our coworkers' geckos. And I am not the only one.
We have two coworkers with geckos, and they're both amazing.
Yep. And I have introduced my tortoise before. Like one of the funniest things that I found when the kids had to switch to virtual learning was watching all of them go through like a rapid version of like Zoom fatigue. Like first it was exciting or first it was confusing and then it was exciting and loud and then they just all were done
Hmm.
as well. So I think that also added to a lot of things in the last while was also having to deal with the kids being at home and also the worry about whether or not they're going to have to be home again.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
can't
fun.
imagine how it is for a person to not only have a dramatic change in their work environment, and then to have to be a full-time homeschool facilitator while you supervise your children on top of that. It's definitely not an ideal situation for anyone. And then
Yeah,
for the kids to have your parents micromanaging everything you do too.
yeah. And then even harder for my kid as well, for the people that don't know, I live in a tiny house, like those TV shows, Tiny House Nation. So my kid being in the loft, up in his little room, and then me being like 15 feet away trying to teach a lesson just wasn't workable. So we had to prioritize, what's more important today. And I won every time for work.
Well, you do make the money and buy the food, so.
That's what I said. If you want to keep eating Fruity Pebbles, I've got to make a paycheck here.
Yeah. So, question for both of you. What advice do we have for managers and teams working remotely to keep the morale up? So we already talked on a couple of those suggestions, but let's build on this a little bit.
Yeah, I like the idea of, even if you're in a meeting and sometimes you don't have the luxury. It's, it might be an hour, we have to get through it. But, even just if you turn your camera off for 5 minutes and walk around and stretch a little bit, just even while the meeting's going on, I think has a lot of value. Because I know for me, sometimes if I start losing my attention span, I could still be in the meeting, but I'm checking my emails. I'm, checking the Facebook page. There's just seeing what's coming up. Next thing I know, I'm really distracted. But I think, just getting up to stretch your legs a little bit, take a few deep breaths, and come back. I think makes a world of difference.
I think I think we need to just slightly modify our expectations of people as well, and allow for that time for people to get into the swing of things and find that balance. And a lot of the problems with virtual environments are having that sense of isolation. So preparing your meetings to find more ways for people to connect as well.
Yeah, one example of that might be last year. We had a series of show and tells. So where at a staff retreat or something like that, we would have icebreaker activities and people would be able to hold their own professional development sessions to sort of introduce some of the things that they do that the other staff might benefit from. What we did was took 20 minutes out of a meeting every week and turned the floor over to a different staff and said, like, show us something that we wouldn't normally see about you in the normal day-to-day work thing. And there was like, at first I was like a little upset about it because I felt there was some pressure there. And so I didn't want to go first. And then I saw a couple of people do it and it turned out to be really, really fun. And it was great because we got to share something personal. We got to remember that we're human. Um, we got to see some of the different ways that our coworkers are creative and got to be a little bit inspired and so forth instead of sitting here staring at a computer screen.
Yeah, I really enjoy doing those as well.
Yeah, virtual holiday parties are also really fun too.
Yeah, everyone brings their favorite recipe and their favorite holiday music, and I found out me and another coworker had something in common because we both considered Christmas music the Gremlins music. So that was like after that I was like I like you. Like
Yeah.
we're buddies now. Like we're super good friends now. So
Shout out to David.
it all started from a Christmas virtual Christmas party that we had.
So one of the other things I've thought about a little bit too, like when we came up with the topic of Zoom fatigue, one of the things that came to mind was I feel bad for Zoom because it's not Zoom's problem. There's other platforms, but I think they're just taking the heat because they became real popular real fast, and
Zoom is just trying to help.
yeah, they're just trying to help, and
they made us pants.
they came a long way with their platform, but it's not just them. There's other platforms out there that we could use, and maybe that helps a little bit when we try different platforms and just try something new. Like if you're in Zoom or whatever platform you use all the time, maybe you need a break from that and you gotta try something else.
Mm-hmm. See, when I think of Zoom fatigue, and I feel for the developers at Zoom too, because Zoom is the new Kleenex and the new Band-Aid. So even though, the brand name Kleenex is used to refer to all things facial tissue, and the term Band-Aid, even though it's a brand name, is applied to all brands of adhesive first aid strips. And I think that we use the term Zoom to refer to all online web conferencing, which is funny because it's not even the first one. You figure that one of the first ones to come along would be that.
Like, what about Microsoft Teams? Like, for
Or
how
Skype.
many?
Does anyone still use Skype anymore?
I still use Skype, actually.
I FaceTime my sister this morning. So
yeah.
There's FaceTime. Not during work, I swear.
Well, then Google has all theirs too, right? Like,
yeah.
Google Meet, Hangouts, and they change theirs all the time. And I think that might add to, like, for me, that adds to frustration because I think I was trying to set up a Meet call last week and I couldn't get it to work. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why is this so difficult? I should just switch to Zoom. But yeah, it's been interesting.
It's funny, some of my college students actually talk about, oh, can we meet in Zoom? And what they mean is actually Blackboard Collaborate, because that's our classroom environment that they have a direct link to right in their thing. So when they say let's meet in Zoom or let's Zoom, they mean like let's meet online. And so now like all of my online classrooms that I use between these two jobs, they're all Zoom now.
So what's next then? Like, so, the province is slowly opening up. I know businesses are starting to open. People are going back to offices more recently. Are we going to see is the Zoom fatigue? Is it going to die off, or is it here for a while? We got to figure out how to cope with it.
I can't see it dying off. I think it's something that's always going to be there, but because it was so new for people, is why we all noticed it. I think it's just gonna kind of melt into just being work.
I think it also depends on who you are, because there's some people that really don't do well in these kinds of work contexts, and then there's other people who do well. So I think it's going to be different from person to person. But the other interesting thing is There are some organizations that I know of that have actually ditched their offices and have gone to work from home context permanently. So there's those people. And then there are people who have been navigating this for a year and a half and now are expected to return to work. And I kind of feel for those people too, because the pandemic is very much ongoing. We have things like vaccines and better protocols and so forth. We're getting a little bit used to safety guidelines and physical distancing and so forth. But if I had to return to an in-person work environment while this is ongoing and have to go through security screening and show my vaccine passport and everything every single day when I go to work, I think that it would amp up my anxiety. And it makes me feel for the people who actually do have to go through that, because for me that's like, oh my gosh, what if Good Learning Anywhere was suddenly an in-person work environment? I couldn't handle that, but that's a reality for some people.
I
Any advice for
sometimes
them?
Well, I sometimes jokingly always say, like, we have a course for this, but coincidentally, we have a course for this. So one of our new Adobe Live courses coming up that I created over the summer is a two-part series on mental wellness at work. So the first series, the first class, we really concentrate on working from home, virtual workplaces, burnout, stress management. And the second class is all focused on the anxieties on returning to the workplace. So, what it might look like for your symptoms for another coworker to see, what it might look like for another coworker going through something as well. And also, what are our supports and resources out there, and how to have a conversation with our workplace if and when we need to as well. So just understand, like, there is a lot of supports out there nowadays. And sometimes you just need to ask. You just need to ask what they are.
Yeah, so if anybody listening to this is interested in taking that course, I actually did review it. It's got a lot of really great material in it. That's going to be running October 18th and 25th. So 18th, the 18th, I believe it's at 1:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the first part that Holly was sort of breaking down for us, and then the following week will be part two. And if you're interested in taking that course, you can go to register at goodlearninganywhere.com. And while you're there, take a gander at some of our other courses as well.
And if you ever want to see what our faces look like, you need to do a really good search on that website to find Meet Our Staff. And you'll see photos and quick little bios of us as well, if you're up for a scavenger hunt.
Yes, yes. We swear we're not bots. So is there anything to add?
I think everyone just needs to, like, cut themselves some slack as well. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have everything running perfectly. And it's okay to prioritize your mental health as well.
Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that I wanted to ask you is we had mentioned a little bit about your mental health first aid. If anybody is interested in taking that, how do they get in touch with you?
They can go to my website, which is superioredgerescue.com. And the other great thing is we have mental health first aid instructors all across Canada as well that are all able to host courses. Mental health first aid is not just a Canadian company. This is an international organization in so many different places. And the training is so important that in a lot of workplaces, it's actually mandatory, just like first aid as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really great course that I recommend that, everybody takes, management and staff alike.
Yeah, and the reason that I wanted to bring that up is because even if you're not really in a position to help as much as you think, even being able to recognize it in others, um, cut them some slack, recognizing some of the issues in yourself and cutting yourself some slack really, really does go a long way. And then you also have the tools to help if you are so inclined.
Yeah, and a lot of the tools now also recognize the importance of self-care.
Hmm.
And I really hope that people haven't been sick of that word yet with everything that goes on, but it is really important to top up your cup every day, right? So
Mhm.
you're probably pouring yourself out emotionally to your job, to your family, to your friends. We got to remember to top that up. So practice self-care. It's not selfish to take care of yourself.
Awesome. Warren, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, I think Holly's on the right path, and I know getting up and I don't want to say exercising, but sometimes just going for a walk. It's 20 minutes around the block or whatever it is, and I think that's just really important to get moving, and then come back. You just kind of get that time to kind of decompress a little bit, and then when
Mhm.
you come back, your mind's just a little bit more clear. Um, so I think it's a lot of it is time management, and if you're having back to back meetings, it's okay to say no or ask
Mhm.
for if we can reschedule. Like, I think we have to ask those questions. We don't always have to feel like we have to say yes, yes, yes. Let's try to accommodate each other and just be reasonable with expectations. Everything's not in a rush. I know we live in this digital world, and it seems like everything is now, 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 right? You get that little light that pops up on your phone. Oh, you've got a Facebook comment. You immediately want to jump on that, right? And see, well, who commented or what is it? So I think we just really need to step back and slow things down a little bit and not be so quick to say yes all the time.
For sure, for sure. I like the idea of getting away from my computer and doing some analog things, if you will. I'm really into arts and crafts, drawing and painting, jewelry making, all sorts of stuff like that. And I found that um, with not having the usual out of the house outlets, those were the things that really sort of help me keep any kind of balance. And so if you get an opportunity to be creative, no matter what it is, those are things that we should be trying and even branch out a little bit too. I don't know if you guys have anything like this in your town, Warren, but Holly and I here in Thunder Bay, there is a company that is run by artists, and what they have started doing was providing canvases with outlines, and you can buy these kits that have a canvas with a pre-drawn picture on it. They give you the paint, the brushes, the palette knives, and so forth in a package. And then they give you a link to a video that has painting instructions so you can take paint classes from home. And those things go a really long way in helping people try something new, discover some creativity, and just, even though you still need the internet to access those videos, you are not interacting online the usual way that's expected of you at work. Actually, you might
I'm
be familiar with this company. The last time you were here, we actually went to them for a staff paint night.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm
Yeah.
trying. I wanted to move my camera, but I won't. But yes, I showed up late for that paint night and painted a giant UFO.
Yep.
I do recall that. All I'm hearing in my head right now, ding ding ding, is like, this could be fun for workplace to send out paint kits and we could all like meet for a paint night or a paint afternoon.
That would be
Um,
great. I know that would boost my mood.
it would also boost my mood to have chocolate with that too. I'm just throwing that out there as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've put it in the suggestion box.
Awesome.
I didn't see you though. Your camera's still on. I didn't see the suggestion box come out.
Oh,
But
it's downstairs.
I do want to shout out to the creative company, and they're awesome. And shout out to Steve Giroux, who ran our paint night as well, because I don't think that they understand how awesome that was for us and how much we miss being in person. Because that might be actually one of the last memories I have of all of us together before this pandemic even hit.
Yeah, that was a great night.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Okay, so with that, I think it is probably time to wrap up. Thank you very, very much, Holly, for joining us. This was a really great talk. Sorry that we had to drag you into Zoom to talk about how draining Zoom can be, and very, very sorry for Zoom, the digital Kleenex, for all of the negativity that you endure as people go through digital fatigue.
We appreciate the pants though.
We really appreciate the brand new pants filter. Warren, as always, it was really great to see you and speak with you. And I really, really hope that one day we get to record one of these podcasts in person. Thank you to all of our listeners for plugging in with us today. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to suggest a topic for us in the future, you can email us, Diane, Diane, at shlc.ca. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And we will be back again real soon.